We've got a local story here and a guest who pumped this thing up to be a national story by standing his ground against the local school district, which has been subverting and ignoring parental rights. And so wanted to make sure that we give him a warm welcome, because he is doing the Lord's work and making sure that, we do the hard things, because it's not easy. Anyway, Steve Schneider, how are you, my friend?
Doing good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So, listen, I am thrilled to talk to you because a couple of things, man. To stand in the face of a whole bunch of hostile actors who are pushing what I believe is to be a incredibly evil ideology, and standing up for parents who are also afraid. It takes a lot of guts, because, when you're seeing your name in the papers and there's news vans and things like that coming around your home, it's freaky and it feels weird, especially right at first.
Yeah, it's very new to me.
Yeah, but these people are bullies. So why don't you start by telling the story of how this all came about, and let's talk about what's going on, because we got a school board meeting tonight and we're all going.
Yeah. We're pumped. I got a call from my wife after winter break when we kids went back into session. My daughter was in third grade, 8 years old at the time, and she said, hey, we got to talk when we get home. I'm thinking, oh man, what happened?
What'd she do?
Yeah. Is she in trouble? And she said, we'll talk when we get home. So, okay. So I get home, and she kind of tells me, in class today, the teacher showed a video that has something to do with transgender. I'm like, well, what do you mean? Did they call you, even talk to you? And she said, no. I said, did you see the video? And she said, no. I said, well, what's going on? And then my kid's asking me questions later that night. I have no information. I don't know what's going on. And I really just don't know how to respond. So I told my wife, honey, I'm going to let you take the wheel on this. I'm just going to focus on doing what I do. Find out from the school everything you can, and then let's go from there. So she figures out from the school teacher that there was a video shown. She ended up emailing us and copying, I think, the assistant district superintendent of CVUSD. And I guess the teacher had asked for the principal's permission to show the video, and she said, do I need parents' permission to show the video? Well, the principal of Maple Elementary said, no, you don't need the parents' permission. You can go ahead and show the video. So I guess they broke the kids down to 4 and 5 in the class, and they showed this video of a little girl reading the book called My Name is Max. And when I had a chance to review the video, I looked at this, I'm like, this is super confusing. It's a 6-minute video, and it makes sense that all the questions my daughter had after that, I was really blindsided by that. From there, I followed up with the principal, and she literally ran away from me. I went to speak with her. I was upset. I think any parent would be. I want to be informed of this, before it happens. I need to have some advance notice. I don't know how to handle this, especially the questions afterwards. So, and then I have a principal that just runs away like a coward. So, what do you do from there? I really had no idea.
Okay, so you just heard my fabulous introduction of Steve, and in the middle of Steve telling his story, my phone was blowing up with both Rob McCoy and Charlie Kirk asking us to come on the radio show live and actually tell Steve's story. So we're going to pop that into this episode right now.
Hello, everybody, to this special episode of the Charlie Kirk Show. With us right now is my pastor, Rob McCoy. Rob,
Charlie.
Welcome back.
Thanks, buddy.
And then joining us remotely is Bryce Eddy, the great Bryce. And Bryce, I don't know if you've ever been on our program, so welcome to our audience.
I have not yet.
So here we go.
Thank you, sir.
And Steve Schneider, who is a great American, and we're honored to have all of you guys. And we're to kind of talk about something important that is local in our focus, but national in nature.
Absolutely.
And so however you guys want to take it. Rob, do you want to start? And then we can kind of...
Yeah, let me do my best to frame it, and then I know
Please
Bryce
do.
and Steve will be able to add all kinds of insight to it. In our community, the Conejo Unified School District, CVUSD, there's 2 newspapers in the Conejo Valley where I reside, and as does Bryce and Steve. these two newspapers. One is the Guardian, the other is the Acorn. The Guardian did a paper, did an article called "Third Grade Teacher Promotes Gender Confusion in the Classroom." And it was an article writing on behalf of Steve Schneider, who's on the program with us, who was standing in defense of his third grade daughter, who was told by the teacher to, now these are the new pronouns of this, fellow student in your class, and this is a book I want to read to you on transgender, and then expose the children to a video without parental permission. Steve took issue with it. The Conejo Guardian, on his behalf, wrote a very, very clear and concise article. Mm-hmm. Everything in it was true. Good reporting. The Acorn, which is a defender of, what I would say the California Teachers Association and the district itself, took great offense to it. Then the news channels came out, CBS, they did a whole thing on it. And then there was graffiti at that elementary school, and they blamed Steve Schneider for it. The police came to his house. He'll tell you more about that. He wasn't even there, so it was crazy. I'm wondering if they're going to arrest the people that said they witnessed him doing it, which is why the police searched his home to begin with.
Filing a false police report.
Exactly. And so we've had people show up at the school board meetings. They've been dismissed. They've just been relegated. This is the other one. The superintendent of schools wrote a letter to every parent in the district, wow, blaming the newspaper, the Guardian, and saying we were the ones responsible for the graffiti. And then Joe Kirkpatrick, who is Kilpatrick, he's the one who is the editor for this Guardian, wrote a great response. And so that's where we are. And tonight there's a school board meeting. And
tonight being June 21st for whenever it airs.
Yeah.
But it's going to go on beyond that.
Yeah, of course. We're just going to keep fighting this. So that's the outline. Let these guys tell you more about it.
Bryce and Steve, you guys take it how you want, and we'll let you take it from there.
Yeah. So let me just add one thing, because the book is called "Call Me Max," and the book, the kind of underlying premise of it is this: this kid has got gender confusion, and one of the lines in it is that your parents guessed at your gender and they guessed wrong. And so a lot of this has to do with the parental side of it, and I want Steve to really weigh in on that, because they completely ignored his concerns. And Steve, talk about that a little bit.
There was no communication between the school and me at all. Not even afterwards when they sent her home with that day. We found out from my daughter, who's 8 years old, and she clearly had questions. We didn't know how to answer that. It was, I was blindsided. I'm sure everyone could agree that a parent should be included in these types of matters. Outside of reading, writing, and arithmetic, we gotta know ahead of time, and that's what this is about: parental rights.
So let me just make sure that I'm tracking with this. So you have a third grader who is like either 9 or 10 or 11, if I'm remembering. 8. Okay.
8.
Got it. So a third grader who is, by all legal definitions, innocent from these topics, goes to class. Somebody declares that they're transitioning, but the teacher then decides not to just let that be, but then show a book or a video. Is that right, Bryce and Steve, called Call Me Max? Is that right? So inserting extra curriculum unapproved by parents that then sparks all these other questions, and basically cutting in line for where a parent otherwise would be having these very mature conversations with their child. Am I tracking that correctly?
Pretty much, but we're missing an important point I want to bring up. Before the teacher decided that she was going to show the video, she went to the principal of Maple Elementary School and asked if she needed permission to show the video. And the principal, the way I understand it, from what was explained to my wife, is that the principal told her, no, you don't need permission.
Wow.
And to go ahead and show the video. So
wait, so the teacher actually did something right. The teacher went out of their way. I don't want to say something right, but the teacher said, wait a second, will I get in trouble for showing this? And was given a green light. Is that correct?
That's correct. And this teacher I've known through 2 children now at that school, and I'm actually pretty shocked she did this without communicating with us.
And so go ahead, Bryce.
And when Steve went to the principal and addressed this, the principal turned around and walked away.
She ran away. I approached her after a few days. I told my wife, I said, can you handle this? and let me know what happens. But there was no communication from the school. I mean, you would think that there would be some type of communication, and there was none. And then, to my disbelief, when I confronted her about it and said, hey, what is going on? It was short. She denied everything, and she ran towards the office, and that was the end of it.
Rob, you have a thought?
Yeah, I just want to set the stage. Now, folks would try to say, oh, he's a member of your congregation. This is all part of God's Speak Church. Steve has never stepped foot, except for this last Sunday, has never stepped foot in our church. You're Jewish, right? I mean, not that that's an issue. It's just we're Christian, Jewish. I mean, it wasn't like God Speak was your fellowship, but we've come alongside the community and our neighbors defending their right to be parents to their children.
Amen.
And that's where Steve has found a voice. And I want to commend him. He's one of the bravest guys I've ever met.
So that's where the story gets interesting, in my opinion. It's notable that they were putting this into a third grader's classroom, totally violating parental notification and parental rights. But then, Steve, you fell victim to what so many other parents listening to this are afraid of, and so many other parents listening to this have also fallen victim to, which is the snares of this mob, this cartel almost. Talk about what happened next.
I mean, it goes pretty wild. After the paper came out, there was a lot of pushback in the community, but within days of that, there was some graffiti put on the school. Someone wrote, "Pervs work here." And when I found out about it, it was, pretty late at night, and I was, upset. This is my daughter's school. We don't need this type of thing happening over there. And, it's not the right way of going about things. I think everyone could agree with that. But apparently the police department received some anonymous calls saying that I was the suspect and that they saw me do it. And somewhere around the time CBS showed up at Maple Elementary and around my corners, and I got a call from the detectives, and I told them right off the bat, I said, I don't want to waste time. Just come over to my house and we'll talk. So they came in. They basically told me I was a suspect. They're following up on leads, and I give them access to all my electronics, my Ring cameras. I said, you could have anything you want. You don't need a warrant. I know better to talk to you, but you know what? Just come inside because I'm innocent. But they went through every room, my garage, my house, and I think I proved my innocence that day. I've spoken with them since then, and they're actually a good group of guys. I do appreciate everything that they did.
And so now this has been kind of elevated to the school board level. Can Bryce or Rob, can you fill us in on kind of where that is?
So a number of citizens showed up at the school board meeting. Bryce will go into greater detail. I just want to add one more aspect to this. There's Dr. Shawn A. Anderson, a psychologist who works with trauma, and she's an amazing person. And she wrote a medical outline in defense of Steve's position for his 8-year-old daughter, that this is detrimental to a child. Now they've filed complaints to the board to try to get her license removed.
Her doctor's license?
Yeah, her doctor's license removed.
Yeah, that's how they work.
It's how they work. It's just brutal what they're doing, and they're in collusion every single step of the way. So go ahead and add some more nuance to it with the school board meeting that's already happened and the one that's about to happen.
Well, let me add to that. It's the Conejo Valley, I think they're called the Unity Project, that's actually the ones that filed the complaint against Shanae. And all of this stuff has been done under the guise of unity, including what the actual superintendent of schools wrote up. That was his title. We're all about unity and all that stuff, as he then excoriated everyone who is not advocating for the abuse and gender confusion of kids.
Incredible. And so I suppose the question is, Steve, this is more of a personal question, but it might be too early for you to answer this. Do you regret speaking out against this at this point?
No chance. No chance. I'm not upset at all. I think everyone listening today would agree with me. The second our kid was born, we looked at our kids and we said, we have our own oath. And I'm willing to bet that everyone's oath was pretty similar. And at some point, everyone's going to be called to duty on that oath. And that was my day. And so I'm standing up. I'm going to fulfill that duty. And listen, I know the other side is listening. You're going to lose. We're going to win, and we're going to get what we want out of this. You cannot take away a parent's rights like this.
I love that, and I want to encourage you. What does victory look like? Because sometimes it can feel like you're just fighting, an endless kind of tornado. It's like it's us against nature is what it feels like. Yeah. But actually, these people are super weak. What does victory look like?
Well, let's first get the board out of there, and then we'll move on to the next boards in California. And then once we flip this state and we put the right people in the school board to help our children avoid things like this, then we'll see where it goes from there. But for now, victory is going to be getting rid of CVUSD board members.
Yeah. Additionally, they think that they own our kids. That's the big thing here is they believe that they own our children. And what they also believe is that the majority of parents and teachers are with them, and they are not. So victory here is getting other parents and the teachers who are afraid to stand up, and guys like Steve are leading that because, you have to be willing to take some of these arrows because they come in full force against you. And you have to be very clear on what they're doing. They're advocating for child abuse that, starts with this sort of stuff and ends in chemical castration and mutilation of kids. That's really what they are pushing here.
That's exactly right.
This is we don't have a lot of time, but the superintendent of schools sent this out to every parent in the community, we can have the letter available for folks to read in its entirety. But he basically blames the newspaper, the alternative newspaper in our town, which is the one that reports well, and he comes after it, but never addresses with clarity any allegations or anything with evidence towards the paper itself. And then the editor of the Guardian, his response was tremendous. And if we can take a second, can I just read it?
Yes.
He says, to the Conejo Valley community, in response to the Conejo Guardian story, third grade teacher promotes gender confusion in classroom, CVUSD Superintendent Mark McLaughlin emailed a response apparently to all CVUSD parents and employees in which he resorted to bluster and slander because the facts are entirely against him. McLaughlin did not even attempt to argue that the Guardian article is incorrect in any particular. We challenge McLaughlin to point to any inaccuracy or error in our article or in any article the Guardian has published about CVUSD. We call on McLaughlin to cease and desist making baseless statements and retract his comments, or we'll bring legal action against him personally and in his capacity as CVUSD superintendent. The facts of the story stand undisputed. A Maple Elementary third grade teacher whose name we elected not to publish in the first article presented a girl student to a class as a boy with a new name. We elected not to publish the child's new name, then showed a video promoting transgenderism called Call Me Max. As stated in the article, the Guardian sought comment from the principal, Patty Lewis, and the Parent Faculty Association and received no response from either. The article came out because a concerned father, and that's Steve, of a child in this third grade class was so troubled that this had happened without parent permission or notification that he attended and spoke at the CVUSD school board meeting. He requested to speak with board members, but they would not contact him. Principal Patty Lewis and the third grade teacher were similarly dismissive, according to this father, which led him to approach the Conejo Guardian. After verifying what had happened, we published an accurate story, which McLaughlin has not sought to challenge directly because it is true and factual. Perhaps more importantly, McLaughlin's letter marks a turning point for CVSD schools. The superintendent declares publicly in his own words that all students in every grade level, in any class, in any CVUSD school can at any time be taught transgenderism for the sake of inclusion, and parents don't need to be notified that this is happening. This is coming from a primary public servant over the area's public school children. And the article goes on. It's accurate, and yet it seems as though the CVUSD thinks that there isn't going to be any backlash and that they control the major paper. But we just basically said, Charlie, if we can get national attention on this like we did in the Loudoun County, guys like Steve, that man's brave, and I want to stand behind him. It's just remarkable what he's done, and he deserves accolades and support from across the country.
Do you anticipate, Bryce or Steve, a good amount of people showing up to school boards now and really caring about this because of it? Or what's your
certainly?
What's your read on that?
well, there's been a big call out for support for Steve, and people are showing up like crazy, which is awesome. On the other side of it, there's a bunch of agitators that are declaring that thgoing to show up. The local Antifa group, and those knuckleheads are saying that they're going to be there. So, we're going to hold the line and be calm and respectful and do all that we need to do in the face of these people. But I think it's going to get pretty heated.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think that there's going to be an overwhelming amount of support tonight, and I think the school board is going to have to reconsider their position at this point. Inclusion means everybody, and they excluded the parents, and we're not going to stand.
Yeah.
So, Bryce, you and I were texting when this was bubbling up a couple weeks ago, and you said you were getting kind of competing pieces of advice, and I told you got to fight, punch back twice as hard. What have you kind of learned through this, kind of for other parents that are maybe in the middle or on the edge of publicizing or standing against this kind of nonsense in public schools?
Yeah. So first, listen, my natural inclination, I'm a, combat sports athlete, right? So my natural inclination is to lean in and press in and fight these things. But I want to be, like Rob says, dangerous and wise, and we have to strike the appropriate tones of these things. But the real thing here is, we need other people to be safe and know that they can participate and should push back, because they don't own our kids, and the teachers and the parents need to see the example. Once you do stand up, look, these people are wimps at the end of the day. And in the last school board meeting, the people that were trying to dox all of the people that were supporting Steve and tried to lay out the people that are behind the alternative paper here, and naming names and all that stuff, they were crying at the school board meeting. We need to stand up, and we need to do it bravely, because they will back down.
They had the audacity to call Steve a Nazi. His family survived Auschwitz. Is that correct, Steve?
My family escaped various parts of Austria, different parts of Germany, and some didn't. But yeah, no, I'm a first generation Israeli American on my dad's side. So to call me a Nazi is pretty unintelligent.
Yeah, well, their ideas don't stand up to any scrutiny, and so that's all that they have. That's all that they can do is attack and say silly things like that.
They blanket the parking lot of the church with flyers. While we're in worshiping, they're out there saying racist, fascist, bigot, on and on and on, and they just, and then they're sending out postcards all throughout the community with the same accusations, simply because you're standing on behalf of parental rights, and you're not bowing to something that is chemical castration for children and exposing them, and they have no right to do this, and yet they're public servants, and they don't want any light on this. And so if they're not going to allow Steve and other parents to have a public hearing, then we're just going to take it nationally. That's why I'm, again, Charlie, grateful to you that folks across the nation will pick this up, and we'll get some national exposure to it. Bless you.
I say you're welcome by sneezing.
Yeah. Well, you did it twice. That's cool.
Yeah, exactly. So, but let's talk about like the nationalization of this, meaning the national implications. There's people in Florida right now listening to this, people in Virginia, people in Wisconsin, and they're debating whether or not they should stand and fight. And they have to also realize this is a long fight. This is going to take a fair amount of struggle. What would your advice be to them? First, Rob, and then we can throw it back to them.
It's perfect timing on the question, because as I was telling you about Dr. Shawnee Anderson, and they've come after her and they're trying to get her license, and they've filed a complaint, and she just said, "What should I do? And how do I handle this?" And I said, civility is not in their dictionary, and your question is, what do I do? And I just said, you do what is right. And she understood that. And I said, look, Shawnee, to everyone is given a measure of faith. Mm-hmm. And what is it, we say this about, say, police officers or the like, where it's pensions over over conviction. You're more concerned with your pension than you are with what's doing what's right. Well, I said the same thing to Shawnee. You're going to maintain a license, a medical license, over an organization that is allowing this to continue in the lives of children. Is that license now valid? Is it worth anything to you? You're doing what's right. You know medically, you've been educated and trained. But, I'm not going to tell you how to walk that. Well, to her credit, she's one of the bravest people I've ever met. She's standing strong. It doesn't matter. She's counted the cost. And I think everyone has to look at that and say, this is more valuable to me, the freedom of my children and my grandchildren, than my temporary, what it would be, comfort or safety or security. That really isn't any of those things. They're just causing you to compromise. And so the bravery of Shanae, the bravery of Steve, they're putting it on the line, and it's going to come at a cost. But listen, whatever that cost is, it pales in comparison to the celestial article of freedom that is the most valuable thing you can give your children. Do not cower. Don't cower. Do your job. No more supreme cowardice is permitted. It's not like we signed up to do this. I didn't want to go before the judge on contempt charges because the governor said the church is non-essential. He has no right. And I didn't, that's not what I wanted to do in life. I don't enjoy this. And Shanae doesn't enjoy it, and Steve doesn't enjoy it. We didn't sign up for this. But to say that they're courageous, but you can't do it, all you're simply stating is cowardice. You can do it. Anyone can do it. You're just not valuing freedom as much as you are your temporary security. And you're not looking at generations to come. It's time Americans stand and do what's necessary for this.
But Bryce and Steve, you guys might get nasty looks at your kids' soccer games. So, I mean, how are parents supposed to deal with that?
People looked at me sideways before. That's okay. But I would like to say this to parents out there watching and listening right now, especially the people in my community. There's been a lot of support. I think there's been more support than negativity. Yeah. I think it's time. I think we're kind of ready to say something. And there's people that are afraid. I know you're afraid. I was afraid. The reality is, if you don't do something, the question is, what are they actually hiding from us beyond this? And what's next? If you don't say something and stand up for your kids, I'll go as far as I can. But at some point, you got to jump in at some point. What does that mean? What does that look like for some people? Maybe vote in the right direction, get the right school board in place. And if you won't stand and you'll do that, then, hey, we still have your back. Thank you. But for those of you who are willing to stand and fight with me, I'll fight with you.
Yeah. And I'll add, for years, we've been hostage to some of these evil ideologies, and people have not stood up and fought because they thought that, okay, I guess this is what we just have to go along with. And we have to stop wanting to be liked by people who are promoting evil. Now, I don't care to be liked anyway. I mean, I prefer to, but I don't really need to be liked. But courage is contagious. So guys like Steve, need to be standing up. And the more Steves we have, that take some of those first arrows and expose the weakness of these people, and the fact that the only thing that they have to add is to call you a Nazi or a bigot or a racist or a whatever, transphobe. Once that gets exposed, then more people will come along and say, get out of here with that ridiculous stuff.
Yes. I'll never be ashamed for standing for my children, ever.
There it is.
So, Bryce, I'm interested in one wrinkle of this. If I'm not mistaken, you homeschool your children. Is that correct?
We do, yeah.
So then why do you care about this? I mean, I hear this all the time. People say, I homeschool my kids. I don't care about my public school. It's a waste of time. Tell us.
Well, because I care for other people's children. I am blessed that we've been able to homeschool, and that's not a reality for everyone. I know that Charlie, you're working on some awesome things that is trying to make it a reality for more people.
Yes,
and
we're working on it.
That's right.
Yeah, and we all need to come together to provide opportunities for people who have to, their only alternative, a lot of people feel, is to put them in public school. And I think it's, Dennis Prager says this about universities, that you're playing Russian roulette with your kids, sending them to a university where all chambers are filled except for one. And the truth is that now they brought this down into public schools, and they're conditioning these kids very young into just, terrible confusion and evil thoughts. We care about truth, and we care about other people's kids.
That's right.
And so, it's just fascinating, Bryce, because a lot of our audience says, I'm taking my kids out. I don't care about the school boards. But Rob, if you're a Christian, which if you're homeschooling, you're probably a Christian, but that's not always true, but probably. We're called to be salt and light. You can't just not care. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, the Bible says, Jesus was asked the question, what's the greatest commandment? He says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind, and love your neighbors yourself. And on these two commandments hang all the law of the prophets. Love your neighbors yourself. I want for parents in the Conejo the same I want for their kids, the same I want for mine. I want them to have freedom. I want their purity to be protected. I want their innocence to be protected. I want truth to be able to be known instead of teaching them how to learn instead of indoctrinating them. We educate them, and instead of them being a pawn for a social experiment, we protect them from that. And as we're watching, FDA approval of this and that, and all these other things, all this stuff coming down on our kids. We're going to stand in the gap on their behalf, and that's what every Christian should do. The Bible commands that, Matthew 16:18, upon this rock I'll build my public square, my assembly, my city hall, stepping in to that realm of culture that decides the welfare, which politics, like you and I both know, highest form of community, morality and sociability. We contend for the welfare of our city. And the school, that's the generation. What's taught in this generation of children will be the politics of the next. And we have to do this. Mm-hmm. We don't have a choice as Christians. We've been called to love our neighbors ourselves. And that's why it's absolutely pertinent that every Christian engage in these topics and should be at those school board meetings on behalf of our brother here, Steve, who may not go to your church and may not profess faith in what you believe, but he has found respite, strength, and encouragement from our fellowship because he's our neighbor, and we love that man.
So, yeah, Steve, can you talk about that? Who else has come to your support or aid outside of Godspeak?
That is a long list, but there's two that stick out the most, and I got to say, my friend Carrie really helped me. I was in a bad place. I didn't know what to do. And she's the one who inspired me to go to the next school board. And her husband, Sean, they're amazing people. And they've been with me every step of the way. And I know they'll be with me to the end. And that's victory doesn't count unless they're there with me at the same time. But so many people have come forward. And even today, I'm getting phone calls from people and other people in the community that have some pretty horrible stories of things that, I'm pretty shocked, and I'm certain that the truth is going to start coming out here real quick because it's bad. But everyone in my community gives me support. And I know when people come up to me on the street and tell me, hey man, thank you for doing that. And how do I get involved? This community has my back and I have theirs.
I gotta give him kudos because he came to service. He steps foot in a Christian church. He stands up in front of the congregation, sweet as a button, but he comes on Father's Day. I can't think of a better illustration on Father's Day than to have a dad who is willing to bear the slings and arrows of the misery of Antifa and the secular progressive left and the
false accusations,
mafia coming after him. And there he is, just standing strong. What a great Father's Day illustration. He's a good dad.
Thank you.
And so in closing here, guys, I mean, the school is doubling down. Is that right?
Yeah.
They're acting as if there's nothing wrong.
No, they're in charge. Yeah.
And
if they want our opinion, they'll give it to us.
Well, what's going to happen, guys, this is the beginning of this, because there are, like Steve said, and I don't know if you caught that, there are some other really nefarious things being exposed that are coming next.
Yep.
Because other parents are coming forward with other terrible stories. And I hope it doesn't stop. I hope these parents start to stand up like crazy. And also, we need the teachers, too, because these teachers are not down with this.
There's some really good ones out there. There really are. And they've come up to me, too, and I am so happy to know that there's some good ones in there. In the beginning of this, you think that, everyone's out to get your kids because something like this happens. But I've met some really amazing educators along the way and staff. So I hope they come forward, but that's a tough decision. That's on them.
And the principal sent out a statement basically slandering the whole thing, right?
Slandered the other newspaper, blamed them for the graffiti as though, somehow that's what caused the graffiti. And
they probably did it themselves.
Yeah, there's some speculation that that's the case, and we've got folks following up on that, which is it's not surprising. I mean, when we have Bill Federer come on and he talks about how you start a revolution and you set fire to the front of the store and sell fire extinguishers at the back of the store, Hegelian dialectic. But whatever they're doing, whatever their motivations are, the one thing I do know is this is bringing the community together on a topic that has been ignored, and everyone knows it's there, but they were just hoping it'd go away, and it's not. And now these folks are brave and are standing. And Steve's the first penguin off the iceberg.
I love it. Any closing thoughts to our national audience, guys?
Bryce, let me qualify that. How do we put pressure? Do we have any numbers that they can call or anything we can do to get folks to respond? Have you thought about that?
No, I mean, so many of these things, although this is a national story that, it's a local story, but it's a national issue.
Right.
People need to get involved and start paying attention. I mean, that's the biggest thing that you can do is go to these school board meetings, because they run these things intentionally long, and they do the worst stuff at the end of these things. Yeah. They drip with contempt towards parents. And so we need to really be a threat to them, and I mean that in the show up sense, and proclaim that they do not own our kids, and we have to do that at the local level, and that's why this is of national importance.
Yeah, amen.
Absolutely. I would also add, let the superintendent of schools, McLaughlin, Conejo Valley Unified School District, know of your displeasure. If you want to let them, you can find those numbers, you can dig them up. You guys are resourceful.
Well, let me jump in here real quick.
Do it.
It's actually, there's other, he's in the grand scheme of things, he's not even the one to go after here. It's the rest of the board. It's the elected officials. He's an appointed official. He's an appointed into that position. So you're talking about Lisa Miller, Gorback, drawing a blank here.
Yeah,
right
you can look these people up. Conejo Valley Unified School District. Look them up, because there's some really nasty folks. I mean, I spoke at one of the meetings, and again, they drip with contempt towards the role of parents.
That's exactly right.
Yep. They can't stand us, not one bit.
And it really asks a question like, where do they get their money from? Actually,
yeah.
Who funds them?
Yeah, it's magical.
Whose children are they? Is actually the most important question. Thank you guys so much. Really appreciate it. We have your back 100%.
Charlie,
thank you, Charlie.
I know that to be true. I mean, I called you last night and you put this together. God bless you, friend.
Let's do it.
Thank you.
Let us know. Thank you, guys.
Take care.
See you.
All right. Well, that was fun. A little bit of an unusual episode for us, getting interrupted to do live radio with the great Charlie Kirk and Rob McCoy. So that was fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah?
Absolutely.
Right. Well, that should blow up for you, man.
Maybe that's going to be amazing.
Maybe be on Tucker next. I don't know.
One could hope.
Yeah, no, listen, one of the things that we emphasize there, and I want to re-emphasize, is standing up, in these ways is really uncomfortable, right? Because you get all those slings, from, all of these jerks that are, the only game that they have is to, call you a transphobe, a Nazi, bigot, hater. It's interesting because one of these lunatics, her post where she was, laying out, all of the details on everybody who, supports the paper or different things like that. She's saying that, have you been hurt by their hateful words? Because, words are violence. And my response was, no, violence is violence. Yeah. And there is an actual dictionary definition of violence. And it doesn't include hurt feelings or ruffled feathers. But that's the only game that they have, right?
That's
now,
true.
What's funny is those same people are the same people that will actually promote and resort to violence at the end of the day.
Very true.
Because they're the first ones to hit you and then blame you for it.
They come out screaming hate, and honestly, there's no hate involved in this.
Right.
We just want our rights as a parent, and we want to be included. I mean, aren't they asking for inclusion as well? Why is the inclusion for them and not inclusion for us? This is
they want you to tolerate their positions on things without any disagreement, but they aren't going to turn in kind and tolerate our positions, which include, hey, I have my kids and my kids are mine. They are not yours.
That's right.
And you are not in charge of my kids. You are privileged to be delivering them an education, which they've been doing largely. I mean, there's some amazing teachers out there, but they're largely doing
educators there.
a lousy job at I think the state level and some of these local levels, because they're interjecting these things that are super inappropriate for kids. It wasn't too long ago that I had a third grader, and this stuff is over their heads. It's not what they're thinking about. They aren't thinking about sexuality. They aren't, and even
They're
going
thinking
on
about
into
recess. They're thinking about going out and playing with their friends. And, I don't want to do math. I want to go out and play. This is not on their mind. Most of these kids still believe in Santa Claus.
Yeah, exactly. And so if you're, promoting things like that Call Me Max book did, where it's, talking about, parents just guessed, that's evil. Now, on that, I think, are saying the right things and believing the right things, which, we need to be loving towards even these folks. And, Rob, always says that, people are not the problem, they're the opportunity. And we need to be as loving as possible towards them, because I think they're deceived.
I think I said this from the beginning, because there's a difference between anger and hate. Anger is short-lived. Yeah. And I was angry in the beginning. Yeah. There's no question about it. But I don't hate. Hate lasts much longer. And it seems that the people that are calling me a hater, and saying these things to me that I'm a Nazi, they hate. And it's just projection. I'm not a psychiatrist. I can't I'm not going to come from a position of with any doctorate, but I will say projection is easy to identify, and that's what they're doing. Along with that, really quick, I wanted to touch base on some teachers. Just to go back to that real fast, there are some amazing teachers in this district, and I am so thankful that they are here, because it brings me hope that we're going to really kind of turn the tide here, and that those teachers are going to stay and not leave, because that's the problem we're facing.
So that is a thing that needs to be considered. So teaching is like any other profession, and I've said this before for people who've listened to the show, and I say this about any occupation. Most of the people doing the job are average or mediocre. Okay, and that's just a fact. We're all human beings.
Sure.
Most of them are going to be average or mediocre, and this goes for teachers. Then there's some that are truly terrible. And do not have your kid's best interests at heart, are lousy at the job, or they're incompetent. There's a bunch of those.
Those are the ones we want to go.
We do want to be able to fire them. And then there are the truly great teachers. And they're the few, in that profession, the truly great ones, right? And we need to do what we can to, shine a light on those folks, bless them, pay them more,
100%.
Teach them to be entrepreneurs, because there are opportunities coming as these schools continue to fail, where those teachers can, go out and start their own teaching businesses. And I do believe that that's going to be a big wave of the future.
I agree with you. A lot of parents, we were saying this out to ourselves, like, we don't want our kids in public school at this point, but the majority of us can't afford that. We're average people working, 9-to-5 jobs with, whatever is happening in the economy right now. And we're just kind of holding firm at this point. But, we're waiting for an opportunity. Is homeschool an option? For my wife and I don't think it is right now. Yeah. But kids need to be around each other. They need to get that social aspect of things. And it's a hard balance.
I want to retort a little bit on that, because it's interesting. And by the way, I although we've homeschooled for many years, and it has been a wonderful blessing for our family, it is not right for everybody. But a lot of people misunderstand it and are fearful of it. And you heard Charlie, he kind of sneaked it in there a little bit, or I brought it up. That Turning Point has Turning Point Academy, and we're working on some things to really bring a bunch of those possibilities to families that that maybe they haven't been able to homeschool. Maybe both parents work. Well, what are the options? If you can't do private school, and you don't want to subject your kids to this nonsense where they think where the state thinks that they own your kids and they're going to teach them in the way that they believe they should go. What are your options? If we can develop pod schools, if we can develop hybrid programs, if we can develop things, that is the answer.
It's amazing.
And we're working on that.
You're going to see kids come out with a better education, because the teachers are going to be more vested. They're going to be taken
100%.
care of a lot better. And the students that are going there, it's going to almost, the involvement with parents at that point, I believe it's going to be there. We're sick of the school district.
And so to create these opportunities where you do have these community groups that are schooling, number one, people always talk about that socialization aspect, because I think when I grew up, when I was a kid, the people that were homeschooled, it was a little strange, it was very, very different than it is in the modern time. Those early homeschool pioneers, it was sometimes the refuge for kids that had no choices other than that. But that's not so today. Yeah. And, my daughters were in speech and debate club. They had lab groups with, so you become parts of these communities. And it's like, having that schoolhouse where everybody's able to come together for all kinds of subjects. And my daughters had music and orchestra and all of these things. So the contrast.
Where have you been, man? Had I seen you on the street, you even said anything like this, I would sign me up. That's fantastic.
No, it was awesome. And, we figured it out, and it happened because parents got together and said, hey, you know what, I'm pretty good at science, and I'll host a lab at my house, and the kids will do experiments that they don't do now in public schools, because they've really watered down as they've been pumping up the crazy stuff and pumping up things that don't make sense for our kids' education, especially at the early ages. They have dialed down the real useful stuff. There's opportunity in homeschool networks where you have shop class. They eliminated shop class and all of these things where you were learning useful things years ago. And so we have an opportunity to bring those things back. And I do think that that's the blessing in what these idiots are doing to our kids and to our public schools.
Yeah, it's the opportunities, like you said, most people are apprehensive about these things because we don't know. I don't know. And like hearing this from you is just like mind blowing because, I think of homeschooling as my kids sitting there and my wife yelling at the kids saying, you got your work to do. And, them frustrating her. And, she's amazing. My kids are awesome. But at the same time, it just, we have that stigma when we think about it, what goes on.
And the most well-meaning people on the planet will look at me and I start to say, oh yeah, we homeschool our kids. And they'll say, well, oh gosh, so yeah, that's awesome, Bryce. Wonderful. They seem like that. How do they get social interactions with other human beings? What's interesting about that is they are better socialized, and not just my kids. All the homeschool kids that I have met, and yes, there's homeschools environments that have been bad, but we know that there are tons of public school environments that are bad, right? So you're always going to have a mixed bag. Yeah. But by and large, the kids that are homeschooled, in my personal experience, and this gets repeated 1,000 times over by other people in our communities, they look you in the eye. They aren't wrapped up and focused on screens. They aren't, all over social media all the time. They are hardworking. They, have learned a various amount of skills because homeschooling encourages that. It's not what a lot of people experienced during the pandemic, where there was this, let's try to recreate the classroom schooling in front of a monitor. Yeah.
That was
have
really
these kids
tough.
Strapped down to a chair for 8 hours looking at a screen. That's terrible.
No one learned during that time. Nope. I have a feeling the home school kids definitely did, but the majority of kids, there was no learning going on at that time.
Well, I joked that we homeschooled before it was cool or mandated.
That's awesome.
But anyway, man, so we kind of went off on some tangents there because that was a fun episode to be able to do with Charlie like that. But I do want to circle back to you because, man, your courage in this and standing up can be contagious, and other parents need to do that. Mm-hmm. What would you say to them who are knowing that, hey, this isn't right, this is going on, here's this circumstance that I really am stressed about, but I don't know who to talk to. What would you say?
If it wasn't for my friend Carrie, I wouldn't have stood up. And it just took that motivation and say, go to a school board meeting. So look into it. Look into your school board and find out when their meeting is. And if anything, just go there and listen, because they will reveal themselves and you will see, oh my God, what's being taught to my kids? And then we get those emails from the school. A lot of us push them away. Read them. Look into it. Some of the subject material is extremely bad. And I didn't even learn most of this until I really got into it with some of the other parents. And I gotta really tip my hat to them because they've been fighting for a really long time. I'm late to the game. They're the ones that need support, and I told them I would bring people, and that's what I'm doing here with you today. I'm bringing people, but even you know, if you can't figure it out, you're in my school district, and you want to stand up and you want to get involved, you can even find me on Twitter. I got about 14 followers, and you know, you can find me as Maple Dad.
Maple Dad.
Maple Dad. I think it's I've had this thing since 2016, and I got like 14 followers.
All right. Well, now you're going to have 20 followers at least.
20. That'll work great. Maybe I'll post something one day.
No, well, listen, that's that's good, man, because you can lead in a way that you never expected to.
Never. I didn't wake up at any point thinking that I was going to be taking on this fight, and that all of a sudden my personal information has been pushed out there into the media.
What were your thoughts when the news vans were outside?
Oh my God. Like, this was unreal. I'm just some guy that's been staying out of the limelight his whole life I don't need to get involved. I don't get involved, and they're here, and they're not here to be nice. They're not asking good questions. They have an agenda, and you know, I know better. So my first thought was go inside and shut the door, and that was it. I didn't want to have anything to do with it.
Yeah.
It was scary.
No, it is scary because, you know, they don't want to just report the facts. You know, most of, you know, our legacy media, and most of it is controlled by, you know, this dominant ideology of this secular progressive world that we're in. What they want to do is, you know, get a good news story that will drive, you know, revenue for them. Sure. And they want to destroy you in the process.
Oh yeah.
You know, that really is it. And people are terrified of that. I mean, I get it. You know, but you have to at some point, and this would be the encouragement I want to give to, you know, other folks that are in that situation. You have to just do what's right.
Yes.
And damn the torpedoes.
You know what? My friends told me at the beginning of this, they're texting me before I even came on air today with you. They said that, you know, I'm going to be in this whirlwind of everyone pulling me in every direction. And at the end, I'm going to spit out, gone. And I'm going to be left to hold everything up at the end, and no one's going to have my back. And so, you know what? If I achieve my goal and I make sure that my kid is taken care of, that's my duty. I made that oath. That's my duty, and I'm going to fulfill it. So I'm a man of my word. Yeah,
and protecting your children, you know, means that you might take, those slings and arrows. You might take gunfire if you're protecting somebody. Yeah. I mean, you know, the facts are that you put your life on the line to protect your kids
every day.
And we need to do that within our community because there's other people right now that, you know, are unable or unwilling or afraid to stand up. And so they need guys like you that'll be like, all right, I'm just gonna go for it.
You know, if they're out there listening right now and they're confused about it, come find me. Come find me on Twitter. Send me a message. I will respond to you. I will help you in your fight. You help me in my fight. These are our children. They don't belong to the district. These are our kids.
Yeah, and along those lines, and sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there. Along those lines, if you're watching this and you have been told a story of something that's going on within our school district, within your school district that needs to be highlighted, reach out to Steve, reach out to us, here on this show. Because we will highlight these things. We need to expose this. We need to, bring sunlight onto what they're doing. That's the only way that ultimately we're going to win. And what victory looks like is getting other people to stand up and protecting our kids and just getting the
getting rid
attitude.
of the board.
Yeah, getting rid of the people who believe that they own our kids and that they can do whatever they want to
my friend Carrie,
captain their education.
It's true. My friend Carrie said, and I'll never forget this, and I threw it back at them when we were at one of the board meetings. She said, "These are our children, not yours." And this goes through my head every single time I go up there and speak to them. These people think that my kids belong to them. No, I'm not dropping them off for babysitting. I expect an education. You don't get to take them and just kind of do crazy things. I mean, you got to keep us involved. I may have said this earlier, but I'll say it again. In one breath, they say, they talk about inclusion, and the other, they exclude the parents. That just brings division upon everyone.
Well, and I find it funny that it's the Caneo Unity Group or Unity Project or whatever they're called that is the ones that are driving the most hateful actions, and they're liars. The people that are espousing unity are not after unity because they don't believe in allowing us to have our viewpoints of these things. And that's why when I look at this, there isn't really compromise with people that are espousing.
I'm going to say this, and I kind of got to jump in here and say, at the last board meeting, there was some really meaningful conversations that took place in the hallway, really meaningful.
Good.
And I think that people from the other side, when they actually stopped and listened and said, I told them I was here because my parental rights, and they had heard me speak already. But when we talked to them, I said to one woman, I said, "What do you think I know about being transgender?" And she jumped in immediately, and she was angry. She said, "Not a thing," And she went off for a second. I listened. I gave her that respect. But with that, I said, "That's perfect." So when my daughter came home after watching a 6-minute video, do you think I had the tools to respond to that discussion? What do you think I told her? And she stopped, and the look on her face just kind of came over like, oh, wow, this guy had no idea what to tell his kid.
Yeah.
Because these parents...
That's a great point.
These parents, they did the research on what's going on with in their eyes, what's going on with their kids, right? And they know way more than I do about their children. And I don't get involved in their household.
Right.
But I sat up watching videos on lots of these parents, going through, the transgender stuff. And I'm trying to learn. I don't understand. And I guess that's part of me that I want to kind of understand this. But
I'm glad you're saying that because that's good as to where your heart is at.
There
but
has to be
those
compassion.
Conversations, sensitive conversations like that need to be the parent, owned conversations. You need to be driving those conversations with your kids because you have that perspective on where your kid's at, where their development is at, and what they need to know about these things. And a lot of this is driven by this early sexualization of kids and things like that. That being said, I want to make sure that this is heard. I don't hate, and I know you don't hate people who are suffering from gender confusion. But I do hate the ideology that is pushing it on these kids, and I think there's a distinction there. I think there are people that that need help and need counseling and need love because of what's going on in their heads and their hearts. That and those are the people that we want to speak to and love on. But the people that are insisting upon putting gender confusion where none exists on our kids,
they're out of their lane.
Those are the people that need to be stopped.
A parent needs to be included, and if anything other than basic education is going to be taught, the parents need to be included and informed. And they're later an argument's going to come up. They're going to say, "Okay, we're going to send you an email. You have 14 days." It's like, no, you're going to send me something. I'm going to either say yes or no, and then we're going to go over there.
Well,
we're
a lot
going to
of
opt in, not opt out.
Yeah, a lot of it is they really don't want us to also see a lot of the material. So they're doing what they can like that.
Let me bring something up real fast. I'm glad you brought that up. So my friend Carrie, I didn't know anything about Teen Talk. I'm sure you've read about it. It's pretty bad. But my friend Carrie, this is so bad. So Teen Talk came out, and it was a link that we got. 14 days under the education code. You have to get it by email. So we click on it. It goes to a dead link. We click on it. It goes to a dead link. We can't get any information on this, okay? So what ends up happening is Carrie makes, her phone calls. She goes to the principal, and she goes to the district. She's not getting responses. They don't care. Finally, when we go to a meeting that happened, this is maybe 2 meetings back, she informs them. Well, the superintendent, Mark McLaughlin, he says, "You have clicking problems." And he made fun of her. He made it a joke. So she was clearly upset. Yeah. So we leave. Let's go back to the meeting after that. He admits that he's wrong. He admits that there was an error going on. But it still went on.
How convenient, by the way.
Yeah, we didn't get a chance to see the material.
Link didn't work. Yeah, well, it's some nefarious stuff, and it's the over sexualization of kids, and it is teaching them things that they should not be being taught, and they're trying to cut the parents out of having those meaningful discussions, which is where those discussions should be, is in the home. And I understand not every parent does it perfectly, but we need to be in charge of that, not the school districts. Well, listen, man, that was awesome. I appreciate you coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Once again, man.
It was amazing.
Thank you for your courage, and continue to be brave, because it's not over. You're gonna get some more attacks for sure.
I've been attacked before.
Good. All right, man. Well, you're a tough guy. I love it. I love it. No, hey, man, this inspires people, so I appreciate you coming on.
I can't wait to talk to other people in this community about it. So,
well, good.
Come chat with me.